Hello everybody, welcome to the second video of the chapter 6 titled Political Parties. In this video, we'll cover the remaining 4 topics of the chapter. The first will be studying national and state parties. Under this topic, we'll cover the definitions of both and the criteria laid down by the Election Commission for recognizing both. The second topic will be about studying 8 national parties. Now, since your book has already given 6 of them, I'll brief you about 2 more which have been recently recognized by the Election Commission. The third topic of the chapter is about problems or challenges faced by political parties. Finally, the fourth topic of the video is about efforts and suggestions to reform political parties. In case you haven't watched the first video of the chapter, you can find the link to it either here or in the description box. Let's begin by defining national and state parties. Do you remember studying federalism? If you do, you'll know that federalism is a form of government where power is divided vertically among different levels of the government. So in federal countries like ours, which is India, you'll know that there exist 2 types of parties. The first is national parties. National parties are country-wide parties that have their units in several states. Even though these units exist in different states, all these units follow by and large the same policies, programs and strategies that have been decided at the national level. The second kind of parties is the state parties. These parties exist in only one or few states. In India, these parties are also called regional parties. State or regional parties in India might have the term regional in their name, but in their agenda and functioning, they are not limited to any region. A lot of state parties like the Samajwadi Party have national level political organizations with units in several states. Since 1996, each national government has been formed in alliance with at least one regional party. This shows the increasing number and the increasing strength of regional political parties in the country. Scholars argue that this increase means a strengthening of democracy and a strengthening of federalism for India. The increase in the number and the increase in the strength of state political parties have made parliament and national governments more representative and more diverse. Despite their growing national importance, state parties remain conscious of their regional roots. They continue to bring up those leaders and highlight those issues that have strong regional roots. Let's move on to the second topic of our video, which is criteria for recognition as national and state parties that has been laid down by the Election Commission. Now, Election Commission, as you know, is a constitutional body that is responsible for administering the election process in India. It divides parties into 2 categories, registered parties and recognized parties. And the category of recognized parties is further divided into national and state parties. We'll understand this whole process now. So all political parties in India that contest elections have to register themselves with the Election Commission. This means that all political parties in the country are registered parties. However, only a few of these registered parties become recognized parties. They change from registered to recognized parties on the basis of their electoral performance. Just as parties can become recognized, they can also be de-recognized by the Election Commission. One such party was the RJD, that, as you know, is headed by Lalu Prasad Yadav. Among the recognized parties, there are 2 kinds of parties, national parties and state parties. A registered party is recognized as a national party if it fulfills any one of the 3 conditions. The first is that a party should win 2% of Lok Sabha seats from at least 3 different states. The second is that it wins at least 6% of total votes in Lok Sabha or Legislative Assembly elections and wins 4 Lok Sabha seats. The third condition is that it gets recognized as a state party in 4 states. So what is the criteria to be recognized as a state party by the Election Commission? A party has to fulfill one of the several conditions that have been laid down by the Election Commission. But your book gives only one of these conditions, and we'll study only that. The condition is that a party has to win at least 6% votes in the Legislative Assembly elections and win at least 2 seats. Now a question that instantly pops up in our mind is that what is the incentive for political parties to fulfill this criteria and become recognized? Are there any benefits that they get as recognized parties? The answer is yes, they do. When parties have been recognized by the Election Commission, they get several benefits. These benefits include allocation of party symbols, which are exclusively reserved for the party's use, provision of free broadcast facilities on state TV and radio, access to electoral rolls, among several other benefits. Your book has given 6 political parties that have been recognized as national parties by the Election Commission. Recently, 2 more parties have been recognized, which brings the total to 8 national parties in the country. The first of these 2 parties is the National People's Party. It is the first party from the northeastern region of the country to be recognized as a national party. It began in Meghalaya and is currently a dominant party in Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya and Manipur. It was started in 2013 by P.A. Sangma and it continues to be tribal-centric even though it has contested elections with the Bharatiya Janata Party. The second of the 2 parties that have been recognized as the national parties is the All India Trinamool Congress. You know, this party has continued to dominate the state of West Bengal under the leadership of Mamata Banerjee. It began in 1998 and was recognized in 2016. Currently, it is the 5th largest party in Lok Sabha. Its popularity rose at Nandigram movement in 2006. The motto of the party is Mother, Motherland and People. If you have watched the first video of this chapter, you would remember how we discussed political parties being the most visible face of democracies. We also discussed how we as citizens have been critical of political parties at some point in time. Popular dissatisfaction with parties and their criticism has highlighted 4 major problem areas in the working of political parties. The first is lack of internal democracy within parties. A challenge that is common to all parties around the world is that parties lack any internal democracy. There is a tendency towards concentration of power in the hands of either one or few leaders. Parties do not maintain any membership registers. There are no regular organizational meetings. There is a lack or absence of internal elections. This means that genuine party workers often lack important information and the means to progress in a party. And those who have the means, connections or money or muscle power are often able to rise to the top. Since one or few leaders exercised paramount importance in the party, those who disagree with the leadership often find their places difficult to secure. Therefore, loyalty to party principles is replaced by loyalty to few leaders in the party. This problem was seen when a few months ago, 23 Congress leaders wrote a letter to the Indian National Congress leadership where they wanted several reforms in the party to make the party more democratic. That letter was an example of how parties lack internal democracy. The second challenge that parties face is of dynastic succession. Now, this is something that is most visible in our country. A lot of parties face this problem, where political parties do not practice open and transparent procedures like elections for their functioning, and there are very few ways for an ordinary worker to rise to the top leadership. This is not just bad for the party but also bad for democracy, because then people who do not have the adequate resources or money or muscle power cannot advance and progress in a party, and those with inadequate experience or lack of popular support can occupy high positions of power. The third challenge that parties face is a growing role of money and muscle power. This becomes visible especially in times of elections. Parties see these resources as shortcuts to election victory. They nominate those candidates that already have huge amounts of money or can raise them for their election victory. Rich people, companies, and big giants often fund these parties, who tend to influence the policies and decisions of the party. In some cases, parties also support criminals because they can easily win elections and garner money. The fourth and the final challenge that parties face today is that they seem unable to offer a meaningful choice to the voters. In order to offer meaningful choice, parties have to be different in the policies they propose. But in the recent years, there has been a decline in ideological and policy differences among parties. Sometimes people cannot even elect different leaders because same leaders keep shifting from one party to another. In order to overcome these challenges, several reforms have to be introduced in the working of political parties. Let's look at some of the efforts to reform them. The first has been the anti-defection law. In 1967, the anti-defection law was introduced as a constitutional amendment. This was introduced to prevent MLAs and MPs from changing parties. To understand the significance of the law, we need to understand what defection is. Defection can be defined as changing party allegiance from the party on which a person got elected to a different party. So say I contested election on the ticket of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Now after having won election, I now want to change my party. The motivations could be different. It could be either because I'm getting cash in return of changing my party, or that I get a better position. With such motivations, MLAs and MPs often change their parties. So I might change my party to Congress or to the Aam Aadmi Party. This is called defection. Defection has been made illegal by the anti-defection law of 1967. The advantage has been that it has prevented leaders from changing their party, which in turn has made governments more stable. The disadvantage has been that now it prevents dissent. MLAs and MPs can no longer vote on the bills based on their judgments or conscience. They have to vote along party lines. The second effort at reforming political parties has been the Supreme Court's order of making affidavit mandatory for candidates declaring their property and pending criminal cases against them. The advantage has been that it has helped bring more awareness about the criminalization of politics and the role of money in politics to common people. The disadvantage is that there is no authority that verifies whether the information given in the affidavit is accurate or not. In 2020, Supreme Court again passed an order where it made mandatory for political parties to publish the criminal histories of their candidates in both national and local newspapers for both Assembly and Lok Sabha elections. This was a move that wanted to get rid of criminalization of politics. As a matter of fact, in 2019, 43% of members of parliament, which we called MPs, had pending cases against them. The fourth reform has been that the Election Commission has passed an order making it necessary for political parties to hold their organizational elections and file their income tax returns. This too has been an effort in reducing the role of money and making parties internally more democratic. Besides these efforts, there have been several suggestions that have not yet been accepted by political parties. These include regulations for the internal affairs of the party. These include compulsory party meetings, member registry, party constitutions, independent authority to act as a judge in case of party disputes, and etc. The second suggestion has been that the role of women be taken seriously in political parties. This can be done by either reserving a minimum number of tickets, such as the 1/3 tickets that a party releases every year, or that decision-making bodies of the party include women. The third suggestions for reforming political party has been that elections be now funded by the state. As you know, the current system of elections that we have is where parties fund their own elections. The suggestion that aims to reform the political parties is that instead of political parties, state funds election, where the government should give parties money either in kind such as petrol, paper, telephone, etc., or in cash on the basis of votes secured by the party in the last elections. As we know, these suggestions have not yet been accepted by political parties, but if they are accepted, they could lead to more improvement in the electoral scenario. There are two other ways that the book suggests that could lead to electoral reforms and improvement in how political parties function. The first is that improvement can come through people. People can pressurize political parties to field clean candidates who do not have a criminal history. People can also use petitions, publicity, agitations, pressure groups, movements, and media and demand political parties to be more democratic and fair. If political parties feel that they are losing popular support, they might have to take up reforms and become more serious about those reforms. The second way that could lead to improvement of political parties is that people can join political parties. The quality of democracy depends on the quality of the participants. It is difficult to reform politics if ordinary citizens do not take part in it. This was also a logic that was given during the inception of the Aam Aadmi Party. Thus, the problem of bad politics can be solved with better people coming and forming better politics. That was all for this video. If you want me to explain any other chapter, let me know in the comments below.